Do you want to play as an unkillable, extremely mobile, highly aggressive, melee-focused build that has the ability to not only tank any hit in the game, but also offer the same benefit to your party members with permanent uptime? If the answer is yes, then look no further because this Mystic Spearhand build has got you covered. In today's video, we'll be going over how you can build your Spearhand to maintain permanent uptime with arguably one of the best abilities in the game, whilst ensuring you are never out of stamina, pumping out consistent damage, and relentlessly harassing your enemies without taking a moment to catch your breath. We'll be going over some augment and ring choice combinations that will allow you to tweak this setup to exactly how you prefer, and, of course, showcasing some of the best weapons and drip for the job. So, without any further ado, let's get into it. First of all, how do we make this all happen? This playstyle feels very similar to an MMO tank in that it feels quite rhythmical and rotation-based. Key headlines of how to approach combat is as follows. Pop Mirror Shield and then follow it up with either Dragon's Foin or Quick Fot to get into the fray. You then have a choice. Start hacking and slashing, zipping around the battlefield like a whirling dervish, or compose yourself, I know it's difficult, and use Ravener's Hound to refill your stamina bar, pop another shield, and then start your onslaught. Prioritize popping the shield every 5 to 6 seconds, and due to its 7-second uptime, you and your party will remain invulnerable against absolutely any attack. It then becomes a matter of weaving between popping the shield, burst of attack combinations, and ensuring that your stamina never reaches 0. So, in a nutshell, our priorities are A. Ensure permanent uptime of Mirror Shield, B. Maintain the stamina capacity to always have at least enough to cast the shield and preferably not exhaust ourselves when we do so, and C. Weave attacks which are situationally appropriate for what is going on. It's really important that you adhere to that point about stamina. You never want to exhaust stamina, and that sounds much easier than it actually is, folks. The full skill setup consists of Dragon's Foin. This is our traversal skill that lets us move into combat range, does decent damage, and staggers opponents often as an opener, and it also lets us get out of harm's way very effectively. Sky Dragon's Fest can also be used as an immediate follow-up to Dragon's Foin, especially when we stagger an opponent, and it's also a highly effective means of getting ourselves to stand on the back of larger enemies. Note how I am saying stand on the back of larger enemies and not climbing them. As soon as we start to climb enemies, we lose the ability to cast Mirror Shield, and this is not the desirable situation to be in when playing this build. Leave that to your party members, folks. When we're standing on the backs of enemies, we can still cast the shield, consistently damage them, and refill our stamina bar using Ravener's Hound. You can also still gain access to some weak spots in this position, so what's not to like, folks? So, in a nutshell, Sky Dragon's Fest and Dragon's Foin can be viewed as horizontal and vertical traversal tools that also provide excellent utility and appropriate damage output. Ravener's Hound ensures that we are always able to very quickly refill our stamina bar, and in combination with the right augment, your stamina pool is always going to be in plentiful supply. The more stamina we have to spend, the more utility and the more damage output we are going to be able to provide. The more, the better, folks, and more on those augment choices in a moment. Obviously, the final skill choice is Mirror Shield. This is a 7-second shield that applies to all party members, including yourself, in a fairly sizable AoE. If you pop this, you can't take damage from enemy attacks, but you can take hits to your loss gauge, and some fall damage and debilitations can be exception to this rule, especially if something sneaks through in a gap between your shield pops. Our primary sources of damage are Twine Cut, Magic Cut, and Winding Cut, and are all purely situational choices. I find Winding Cut is absolutely top tier out of all of them though, especially when you knock down an enemy or get a clear run on an enemy weak spot. You are literally like a wind of razor blades, shredding everything in your path. Magic Cut is also very powerful as an attack to use to stagger and one-shot lesser enemies, and it also provides a range attack choice which can sometimes feel like our limiting factor in this build. Speaking of range choices, the Mystic Spearhand's vocation action is Forbidding Bolt. Using its charged up version, Scattering Bolt then creates an opportunity for us to use Quick Fot. If we hold R1 and charge it up, we can then stun an enemy, and If we press R1 again, it will create an AoE stun effect, but on top of this, it also opens a small window to use quick fop. Press jump immediately after the AoE proc and you will teleport to the target. This can be so beneficial as an opener as it doesn't spend any stamina. Now, you might be thinking, but why is there no use of the Maester skill Wild Fury? Well, don't worry, folks. There is absolutely a place for this in this build. It does incredibly strong damage, and I would suggest replacing either Sky Dragon's Fest or Ravager's Hond if you want to use it. The reason I don't personally use it is because the goal of this build is to maintain permanent uptime on the shield, and I feel like due to the length of the animation of the attack, we can sometimes find ourselves locked out of casting the shield, and I found this to be problematic. By all means, throw this in if it's something that you would prefer. This is just the way that I've decided to make this build. Now, before we jump into the augments, if you're enjoying the video and finding it helpful, if you could drop the video a like and drop the channel a subscribe, that really helps me out and helps the channel and community grow. Thank you. Onto the augments. I've experimented with a few setups and I've found that there are 4 mainstays with this setup and that you can chop and change 2 slots to suit your preferences. Primary focus of this build is to stack as much stamina support as possible. Therefore, I take Zeal. This is a rank 6 Warfarer skill. It reduces the stamina used on any weapon skill. This is a no-brainer as it means we get more stamina economy for our skill usage. Exaltation, the rank 9 mage ability, augments our stamina recovery speed, and when we stack this with one of our ring choices, this becomes a truly unrivaled choice, folks. Endurance on the Archer vocation increases our stamina by a flat 100, I believe it is. Again, another no-brainer. And our final must-choose choice is the Spearhand augment Polarity. This gives us a 5% strength increase during the day and a 5% magic increase at night. As our weapon choices scale with both magic and strength, this makes the most sense of all the damage boosting augments. These next choices are purely preference. I've chosen to go for Verve for a flat 30 strength increase. Usually I don't like this as I think 30 strength just isn't worth it, but once you're at the end stages of your build and you've got your final Dragon Forged weapon, this in combination with the 5% increase actually makes it a little bit more worth it in my opinion. I'm sitting just shy of 1000 strength. You could of course also choose Sagacity if you'd rather push your magic up more here. Next up, I choose Dominion from the Warrior vocation, which gives us quite a hefty increase to our knockdown potential. As I've gone with all Dwarven Forging when upgrading the weapon, which gives us a balanced increase to strength and magic and a sizable push in knockdown potential, I think this makes the most sense. You could also go for Athleticism from the Mystic Spearhand for less stamina consumption when running, that's very helpful, or even try out Veracity, that's from the Magic Archer, that gives you stamina regain on kill. I've tried to balance my build as best as possible, but the choice is entirely yours, folks. Ring choices are quite straightforward in my opinion. A Ring of Quickening is a must choose for further increase to our stamina regen, which is of course our main currency here. I opt for the Ring of Vehemence to stack even more knockdown power, which I found to be fairly effective in combination with Dominion and Dwarven Forging. I'm sitting at 780 knockdown power, which is quite nice. You could also, again, opt for rings that increase strength, magic, or stamina here. I personally am running with knockdown. That doesn't mean to say that it is the best, it's just what I'm finding the most fun to play. In terms of the weapon, there'll be no surprises here. I'm using the Lindworm Fang. This is purchasable in the endgame from the Dragon Forged. It costs 110 worm crystals, and when it's fully upgraded, it offers 992 strength, 901 magic, and 665 knockdown power. I also use Rehuant. This is a Frost Elemental Duo Spear offering 50% in this department. I haven't fully upgraded this one, but it still does an excellent job, and I think it looks pretty cool. I'm sure you'll agree. The choice, of course, is entirely yours. I'm also using the endgame pieces from the Dragon Forged, including the Dragon Knight Helm, the Duelist Coat, simply because they are strong and I think they look great. Dwarven Forging is again the only way to go here due to the balanced distribution between magic defense and physical defense. and knockdown protection. In terms of the party composition, you need to factor in that no one is going to be taking damage if you play this optimally. Obviously, in reality, that doesn't always happen, but once you get mechanically sound with this, it becomes increasingly easier. Therefore, a very burst DPS orientated approach works exceptionally well. I run a standard mage, fighter, and sorcerer setup, and I ensure that the mage has Celestial Payan, as this gives us a window of infinite stamina and damage reduction. Again, absolutely S tier. I also make sure that the sorcerer has Maelstrom and or Meteora. These do insane damage and make mincemeat of the toughest enemies. If you're creating space for your sorcerer to just free cast because it's always shielded, it just mutilates everything. It's absolutely awesome. The fighter has Shield Bash to hold aggro as usual, but I'm wondering actually, could I get rid of this and go with a warrior and try to pump more knockdown and damage? I'm sure you could experiment here, folks. If you like the sound of the sorcerer and the burst damage focused approach to gameplay, check out my thief build. It's got you covered. Take care of yourselves, keep having fun, and I'll see you in the next one.